The psychological horror film begins on a desolate street with an African American man on the phone with his girlfriend trying to find his way to her house. The scene immediately evokes the prevalent issue of racial profiling, as black men are often stopped or questioned for simply walking on the street. As he continues walking, a car starts to follow him. Despite trying to avoid any trouble, the man realizes he's being pursued and turns around. The car stops, and he is attacked and thrown into the trunk of the car by a masked assailant. Next, we are introduced to a house with gray walls adorned with artistic photographs, indicating that the owner is a photographer. The film cuts between a second African American man shaving and a woman picking up baked goods from a bakery. The bell rings, and the woman is revealed to be the protagonist, Rose Armitage, Chris's girlfriend. They begin packing for a trip to her parents' house in the woods. Chris asks if her family knows about their interracial relationship, to which she responds that she never brought it up because they aren't racist. She assures him that her father even voted for Obama, but Chris remains wary about how her family will react to him. Despite his reservations, they set off with Rose driving the car. Chris's nervousness is palpable, and he reaches for a cigarette, but Rose throws it out of the window, disgusted by the habit. Chris then calls his friend Rod, a TSA officer, to remind him to feed his dog, Sid, while he's away. The innocent call also serves as a safety measure, with Rod trying to convince Chris not to go meet with his white girlfriend's family. Rose takes the phone and jokingly flirts with Rod, making Chris feel uneasy. When making fun of his apparent jealousy, their car hits an animal. When a police officer arrives, Rose quickly takes charge and explains the situation, but the officer still demands to see Chris's ID, despite him not driving. Chris, a black man, is quick to comply and avoid confrontation, while Rose, a white woman, refuses to be bullied by the officer's unreasonable demands. This incident brings them closer together as Chris acknowledges Rose's bravery and genuine care for him. Upon reaching Rose's house, Rose's parents welcome Chris with open arms. Rose's father, Dean, a neurosurgeon, makes a comment about deer dying and causing trouble in the ecosystem, which may be interpreted as a subtle reference to his feelings about black people. As Chris is given a tour of the house, the decor is noted to be almost too clean, and Dean mentions the basement being locked up due to black mold, a lie we later uncover. Georgina, the African-American hired help, is all smiles, but her demeanor comes off as creepy and unsettling. The backyard, which Dean calls his field of play, gives off the sense of being a hunting ground. Walter, the groundskeeper, is working in the field, and Dean addresses the cliche of white people hiring black help, explaining that the help took care of his parents, and he couldn't let them go once they passed. During dinner, Rose's parents probe Chris about his family background, and we learn of his trauma with an absentee father and a dead mother who passed away in a hit-and-run accident. Chris appears uncomfortable with their questions and is skeptical of Missy's hypnosis therapy when Dean suggests it as a way for him to quit smoking. The discomfort reaches a climax when a distracted Georgina overfills Chris's glass, prompting Missy to rudely suggest that she take some time to rest. The family is joined by Rose's brother, Jeremy, who seems eager to bond with Chris. He shares personal stories about Rose's past, including an incident where she bit her crush's tongue during a makeout session, which she dismisses as teenage inexperience. As the night wears on, Jeremy becomes increasingly drunk and shifts the conversation to MMA, making a disturbing comment about Chris's genetic makeup and his potential to become a beast. In an attempt to ease the tension, Missy excuses herself to get dessert. As she heads to the kitchen, Chris catches a glimpse of Georgina and senses that there's something not quite right about her. When Missy returns with carrot cake, Jeremy suggests play fighting, but his parents intervene before he can embarrass himself further. The sudden change in energy, combined with Jeremy's erratic behavior, leaves Chris feeling uneasy. Later that night, alone in their room, Rose apologizes for her family's odd behavior and acknowledges the racism inherent in their line of questioning. Chris confides that he had reservations about coming to the house, but Rose reassures him and they share an intimate moment, reaffirming their connection. As Chris struggles to sleep, he kills a fly buzzing in his face and reflects on the upcoming party. He sneaks outside for a smoke and sees Walter running straight toward him before veering at the last moment, startling him. When he turns to go back inside, he sees Georgina admiring herself in the reflection of a window, a chilling sight that adds to his growing sense of unease. As Chris enters the house, Missy invites him to sit and talk about his smoking addiction. She convinces him to try hypnosis to get rid of it, explaining the technique as a way to achieve heightened sensibility. While stirring her cup, the sound of the spoon hitting the cup seems to put Chris in a trance that he can't break away from. She brings up his mother's death again, asking him to go back to the memory of the day she died. Chris finds himself stuck both literally in his chair and in that dreaded moment in his mind. Missy asks him to surrender himself to the sunken place, and Chris free falls into an abyss in his mind. From there, he views his past trauma as an outsider to his own mind. Confronting his emotions leaves him a teary-eyed wreck, unable to move. When he wakes up, he assumes it was a nightmare, but we know the truth. He checks his phone and is relieved to receive a picture of his dog and a message from Rod. Taking his camera with him, he goes out to take pictures of the woods. When he returns, he sees Georgina in her room through the window and tries to take pictures of her, but is caught. He immediately pretends to be nonchalant, but when he looks again, she's gone. Chris tries to talk to Walter, who addresses the bizarre interaction between them the night before. Chris gets awkward when Walter speaks weirdly about Rose. He relays the conversation to Rose and tells her of his doubts about being hypnotized by her mother. She seems apologetic and wants to complain to her dad about Walter's behavior, but Chris tells her not to in a bid to avoid causing problems. The next day, guests arrive at the house for the annual party, and they're mainly white. The entire time, Chris and Rose are met with weird questions and comments about his race, including one comment about knowing Tiger Woods when talking about golf, how black is in fashion, and hints as if sex being better. Chris is clearly uncomfortable, so he escapes to take a breather by clicking pictures away from them. Chris meets Logan, the same man we see abducted in the opening scene, but he seems evidently different in clothing and behavior. Before he can get answers, Logan is whisked away by an older lady who seems to be his partner. His attention shifts to a man who identifies himself as Jim Hudson, a blind art gallery owner familiar with Chris's work. He addresses the guest's ignorance and offers insight of his journey from being an uninspired photographer to an art gallery owner after losing his vision. As Chris heads up to his room, there is a sudden change in the atmosphere as the guests below stop talking. To his surprise, he discovers that his phone is dead because Georgina unplugged it. When he tells Rose about it, she brushes it off with a joke, but quickly becomes concerned when she sees the look on Chris's face. While Chris tries to make sense of what happened, he turns his phone on and calls Rod to fill him in. During their conversation, Rod makes a reference to serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer, who brainwashed his victims before killing them and turning them into sex slaves. As he ends the call, Georgina suddenly appears and apologizes for unplugging his phone charger. In turn, Chris apologizes for unintentionally causing trouble and admits his nervousness around white people. Georgina's response surprises Chris. Her eyes well up with emotion as she struggles to tell him something, but ultimately stops herself. Instead, she insists that the Armitage family treats her as one of their own and hurries out of the room. Chris is left feeling even more disturbed by the strange encounter and begins to wonder if Georgina might be mentally unstable. When Chris rejoins the party, Dean introduces him to a few more of his friends, one of whom asks about his experience as an African-American man. Chris passes the question to Logan, who speaks positively about his own experiences. But as Chris discreetly tries to take a picture of Logan, the flash goes off and breaks the facade. Logan's nose begins to bleed and he lunges at Chris, yelling at him to leave before being pulled away by the crowd. Despite the family's explanation of the incident as an epileptic seizure, Chris knows something is off and confides in Rose about his doubts. She takes him for a walk while the rest of the group plays bingo, which we eerily discover is actually an auction for Chris, with Jim making the winning bid. Feeling an urgency to leave, Chris opens up to Rose about his mother's death and the guilt he feels for not calling 911 in time to save her, where she lay cold and alone in her last moments. As they head back to the house, the guests have left and we see the unsettling sight of Jeremy, Walter, Georgina, Missy, and Dean following Chris's every move with creepy looks on their faces. Chris sends the picture of Logan to Rod, who identifies him as Andre Hayworth, a missing man from Brooklyn. But the call drops off. Suspecting a conspiracy, Rod tries to tell the police, but his claims are dismissed and laughed at. While Chris packs to leave, he discovers photos of Rose in prior relationships with several black partners, including Walter and Georgina. He keeps his revelation to himself and asks Rose for the car keys, but she stalls and pretends to look for them. When Chris tries to leave, he finds himself locked in by the family. He tries to leave, but Missy asks him for tea and uses the trigger she implanted during his hypnosis to knock him out. In his barely conscious state, Chris faintly hears Rose say he was her favorite one. Chris regains consciousness to find himself bound to a chair in a basement, facing a mounted stag head on the wall. In a video presentation, Rose's grandfather, Roman, explained how his son Dean has perfected the Kogula procedure. The video then connects to a feed of Jim, who explains the phases of the procedure. Phase 1 is hypnosis. Phase 2 is psychological pre-op. Before the final phase, transplantation. Jim reveals that the family transplants people's brains into other bodies, granting them preferred physical characteristics and a twisted form of immortality. The host's consciousness remains in the sunken place, alive but powerless. When Chris asks why black people are targeted, Jim replies that he doesn't know, but he couldn't care less about Chris's race as he only wants his eyesight. Chris realizes that he's in survival mode and notices cotton coming out of the chair he's strapped in before he's seemingly put back into hypnosis. Jeremy comes to fetch Chris for the surgery, and when he unties him, Chris reveals that he blocked the hypnosis trigger by plugging his ears with the cotton pulled from the chair. Chris bludgeons Jeremy unconscious with a Bach ball and heads to the operating room where Dean is about to perform the surgery to replace Jim's brain with Chris's. Dean senses something is amiss when Jeremy takes time to return. Chris impales Dean with the antlers of a deer mount, knocking over a candle which sets fire to the operating table. He moves to the kitchen where Georgina runs away from him, but Missy lunges to attack him. He pushes the cup off the table, shattering it before stabbing and killing her. Just as he is making his way to the door, Jeremy attacks him, but Chris manages to overpower him and stomps him to death. Chris starts the car and calls 911 while driving away, but hits Georgina with it on the way out, knocking her unconscious. He decides to carry her into the car, compelled by guilt from his mother's death. However, she awakens and attacks him as she is revealed to be possessed by Rose's grandmother. In the ensuing struggle, the car crashes and Georgina is killed. Rose is seen eating cereal and drinking milk while listening to Time of My Life on her earphones when she is distracted by the commotion outside. Armed with a gun, she instructs Walter, possessed by her grandpa, to apprehend Chris, but he uses the flash on his phone to neutralize Roman, allowing Walter to regain control of his body. Walter asks Rose to hand over her rifle, pretending to want to shoot Chris, and shoots her in the stomach instead before shooting himself. Chris begins to strangle Rose, but finds himself unable to kill her. Police sirens approach, and Rose cries out for help. However, the driver is revealed to be Rod, who drives away with Chris as Rose is left bleeding out on the road. What did you think of the video? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more.